If you wanted to understand the policy of a country, come to prison.
In the winter of 1964, Nelson Mandela and 6 other Rivonia trialists began a new life on Robben Island, a place where the apartheid government hoped they would be forgotten. Mandela was 46 years old. His new home consisted of a cold, damp cell and a mat on a concrete floor. The warders were considered to be the meanest in the country. But previous experience behind bars had taught Mandela to stand his ground.
He said, if you touch me, I will take you to the highest court in the land. And when I finish you, you will be as poor as a church mouse.
And so he set the pace for the rest.
But now on the walk to the quarry, the warders began to demand that we walk faster. And the whole atmosphere was one of brutality. And then a whisper came through our column that Madiba was saying, walk slow, chaps. Somehow or the other, Madiba quietly worked his way from one row to the other. And there from the front row, Madiba slowed the pace. And I can remember in that atmosphere, with the warders threatening us, how the entire column slowed down. And suddenly, your muscles stopped quivering. And suddenly you realize that without saying a word, without responding to the orders, and through Madiba's leadership, we had taken control of the situation.
It was a desolate place, but the men refused to allow their spirit to be broken.
Becoming despondent on Robben Island was not an option. I think we were all, if I can use the word, exhilarated by the reality of revolutionary struggle. We saw ourselves as revolutionaries, as people who wanted to change the world, wanted to change South Africa, and no imprisonment was going to dampen our spirits.
These revolutionaries came from rival political parties, but in prison they were able to find common ground and organize themselves. Their plan for survival was to challenge the system and to bring down the walls of prejudice using the most powerful weapon of all, education.
Our behavior in the prison was organized by ourselves. So that when, for example, the study privilege became more general, more and more people were allowed to study, and we were able to pay for the studies because of support from outside, we then organized basically a university. We changed the prison into a university.
Every day at the quarry, we will find people standing in groups, pretending to be working. We are studying. Our slate or exercise book is the ground.
I think I won't be wrong to say that I don't think a single prisoner left Robben Island illiterate.
Some of us got distinctions, and others had transformations in their lives.
Mandela was transformed from tempestuous freedom fighter to a leader who was preparing to reconcile an entire nation.
His enthusiastic efforts in learning Afrikaans were really just as a result of him believing and acting as a South African. And to the extent that he had accepted that Afrikaners would always be part and parcel of South Africa. I think that's the thing that spurred him on, that he had to understand the culture where these people came from. They were the rulers, but they would always be there. You could not chase them out into the sea, and they had made various contributions and progresses in various. And you just, as a politician who was aspiring to become a leader, had to understand as much of the country and the backgrounds of even your enemies, inverted commas.
In prison, Mandela also learned to master self-control.
I recall when news was given to him that his mother had died, news was given to him that his son, Tembi, had died, I think that Madiba understood the enormous self-control that was required of him. Because we were in enemy hands. And no matter what grief hit us, we knew we were dealing with an enemy who would treat any sign in us of our grief as something to gloat over.
He pulled through that and survived them very well, which was a lesson to us as well, so that subsequently when we heard about deaths from our own homes, we thought, well, it's happened to him as well, and so he was able to deal with it. We should be able to deal with it as well.
The long dark years Mandela spent behind bars were filled with pain and deprivation. But it was also a time for profound reflection and growth. He overcame the bad and developed that which was good in him. He didn't break. Instead, he found the strength to rise above the bitterness.
The expectation was Mandela would come out and be angry. Mandela would come out and be vengeful. And he comes out. And everybody, black and white, looks at him and says, oh my goodness, here's a man at peace with himself. By virtue of that generosity, that unbelievable calm, that sense of purpose, and the fact that he didn't break in prison, that made Mandela the leader that everybody, young and old, black and white, came to respect.